Welcome back to the Grand Plans podcast, where we explore the art and science of planning well for the second half of life. I'm your host, Susanna Barton. Today's conversation touches on one of the most meaningful and often misunderstood parts of the human journey, the end of life. My guest today is Nada Frazier, a licensed clinical social worker, certified end-of-life doula, grief counseling specialist, and founder of the Sacred Servant. In her work as a palliative care social worker and end-of-life doula, Nada has supported hundreds of individuals and families as they navigate serious illness, grief, and the final stages of life with intention and compassion. In our conversation today, we talk about Nada's path into this work, what an end-of-life doula actually does, how families can find and work with one, and we explore a powerful example of how one family partnered with Nada to create peace, dignity, and connection at the end of life. This is a thoughtful and surprisingly hopeful conversation about what it means to prepare for the final chapter of life and how doing so can bring clarity and comfort to everyone involved. Let's dig in. Right. Welcome back to Grand Plans. I'm really excited to have Nada Frazier with us today. She's a licensed clinical social worker, a certified end-of-life doula, a grief counseling specialist, and founder of the Sacred Servant. So, Nada, welcome to Grand Plans.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about what you do. I know there are a lot of titles we just talked about, but tell me a little bit about what your work is.
Well, I am a licensed clinical social worker, and so I provide LCSW counseling and psychotherapy support. But I also am a certified end-of-life doula. And so I have a whole other component of my life where I am what I call a life and death coach and support people in preparing for or experiencing approaching end of life, as well as their family members that have a loved one.
I see. Gosh, that is such a specialized area. How did you get into this line of work? How did your path take you here?
Well, I mean, I can, with great confidence, say I've kind of been doing this work all my life without realizing what you call it. I predate hospice.
Okay.
And so what did people do before they had, places like hospice? And in my family, that was my grandmother Hope, who I'm actually named for. My name Nada in the Slavic languages means hope. And my grandmother Hope, when people in our family were ill or approaching the end of their life, they would come to our family farm in Texas, and my grandmother would provide, care for them. And so, as a young child, because I lived off and on with my grandparents, I have memories of crawling up in bed with my great grandmother and adjusting her oxygen, pushing her oxygen tank around the family farm when she could make small trips. So I kind of feel like I've been doing this work all my life. Then, as an adult, I kind of just became what a friend of mine, Deanna Cochran, calls that go-to person in the neighborhood, that when someone that was in my circle of friends or acquaintances, family, had a loved one who was ill or approaching end of life, I'd be that person they'd call. And so I just support them in multiple different ways. Then ultimately, it has, end of life doulas have been around since ancient times, but they've certainly gotten way more recognition in the last 10 to 15 years. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And your business is based in Northeast Florida area.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's called The Sacred Servant,
Mm-hmm.
and that started, actually, I named it The Sacred Servant because people would ask me years ago, before we had the language end of life doula, or at least before I was familiar with it, people would ask me, what do you call what you do? And I said, well, I'm a sacred servant.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how that stuck.
Oh, that's beautiful. And now it seems like you do hear a little bit more about what you do. There's the book by Lua Arthur, who's an end of life doula, and that was my first intro into this wonderful area of work. But tell me a little bit more about what an end of life doula does for someone who may not have heard about that kind of work.
Thank you. Well, I will add that I know Alua. We
Oh.
served together on the National End of Life Doula Alliance
Mm-hmm.
board, and she's a very great practitioner out of California. And there's many others. There's so many books coming out right now that are excellent. So for me, I have people contact me that want support with respect to preparing for end of life or supporting their loved one through it. And again, end of life isn't necessarily a mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't necessarily fall under what we call the DSM-5 diagnosis. I mean, it's a natural, normal thing. And so, as a coach, which is different from providing mental health services,
Mm-hmm.
as a coach, I just accompany people through it and have had the honor of really accompanying many people um, through the end of their life and supporting their family members.
Yeah. What are some of the first things that come up when you're beginning a relationship with a family or an individual? And is it the individual who's experiencing are they the point of contact, or is it family that reach out?
It
Yeah.
varies. A particular couple come to mind, and they actually, um, the woman whose name was Sarah, was adamant that she wanted me to talk about this experience as
Mm-hmm.
part of her legacy, and actually gave me a release, and as well as her husband saying we want you to use our names and
Mm-hmm.
talk about what our experience was, because it was really powerful for them. Sarah contacted, she was familiar with me from a class that I often teach in the community called Live Consciously by Exploring Death. It's a class that I created where I just basically guide people through thinking about and preparing for the end of life, hopefully long before they're in that hot minute
Mm-hmm.
of the end of, I call it the hot minute, but
Mm-hmm.
at end of life. But Sarah reached out to me and said, I've done all these treatments, and the doctors have said I'm at the end of the line on that, and I have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. I have enrolled with hospice because we right at the time, we're talking about her enrolling with hospice, and she said, but I want someone to just walk me through this experience so that I die as well as I can possibly die.
Mm-hmm.
And then uh, I also supported her husband. So basically, the way it worked is that they wanted to meet in person most of the time, and so they would meet me at my office, and I would spend time with Sarah and just and there's all kinds of different things which I can talk about that I do to kind of prepare people, and then I would meet with her husband separately and talk to him about caregiving and the stressors that come with that, as well as giving ideas on things that he could do to support her. in preparing for the end of her life and kind of preparing for the end of her life. So I accompanied them for 6 months,
Yeah.
and then, Sarah passed away, and I believe, and certainly they have both stated that they really are grateful that they sought out someone to accompany them in preparing.
Yeah.
Um, One of the first questions I asked Sarah when I met with her is, "What's a good death to you?"
Right. I was going to ask you that you mentioned that phrase,
Yeah,
good death means something different to everyone, I imagine. And,
absolutely.
and what did it mean to Sarah?
To Sarah, she wanted, I mean, I asked her to describe what she had in mind. She wanted to die at home.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to die in a facility for various reasons, or want to die in a hospital environment, or a hospice, what I call what's called an inpatient facility. And again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's what you want, right?
Right.
That's the beauty of kind of preparing for this kind of thing. Sarah wanted to die at home. She wanted to die in her bedroom. She wanted to die looking out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all things that Michael, as well as the hospice company that supported them, was able to facilitate, right?
Right.
Putting Sarah's bed right in front of the window, and those kinds of things.
Right.
Um, and she's, I'd ask her, who would, nobody can ever promise that they will be there. Um, but, ideally, what does that look like for you? And she said, I want, my husband and my sister at my bedside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how Sarah died.
Oh, wow. And that's beautiful. And you mentioned hospice in this. The services that you're providing work in concert with
They're
hospice.
in
Is that
addition to,
okay?
right?
Mm-hmm.
So hospice has a very important role. I am a
Mm-hmm.
huge proponent of hospice. I actually was a volunteer for a local hospice for over 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very strongly in the work that they do and how they really are able to help prepare people. They have a multidisciplinary team, meaning they have the doctors, they have the nurses, they have chaplains available if the person wants spiritual support. They have social worker available if they need social work support. My role with Sarah was not in any way to be all up in what hospice did,
Mm-hmm.
right? My role was to accompany her and be an extra layer of support for her and her family.
Yeah. Wow. And that's and is it I think maybe there's a thought that, oh, maybe this is just something for the very end, but no, this is and especially in this case with Sarah and Michael and their family, uh, working for a good bit of time ahead of the actual death, not day of, kind of call Nada in, it's time. Like,
Statistics
yeah.
show that a lot of people wait till the very last minute to involve hospice,
Mm-hmm.
which is understandable because so many people want to continue treatment, those kinds of things. I am a huge proponent in, once you've, having them on board as early as you feel comfortable. Again, this is an individual decision. But yes, the fact that I was supporting Sarah and Michael 6 months before Sarah's death, and it almost was 6 months to the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, she really did have an accurate prognosis. That's not always the case. Um, but being able to accompany her in really trying to help her communicate as well as explore what really was important to her in the last 6 months of her life. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, as we continued to explore those things, I asked her, especially in the very beginning when she still had the physical ability, is there anywhere you haven't seen? Some people would call that a bucket list,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything on your bucket list that is really important to you? And she said that she and her husband had planned a trip to Charleston, I believe it was, and but that she, she wasn't going to be able to do all the walking that she could do and those kinds of things. And so we talked about just adapting it, right? You adapt to your circumstances, but if that's an important trip to you, then do it while you can,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I do in my work hear a whole lot of people who, well, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Mm-hmm.
I was planning to retire, and then we were going to travel and do all these things after I retired. And then lo and behold, they get close to retirement or right after retirement and then have a major illness that alters that. Right.
Right.
And so I'm a pretty big proponent of live your life fully. I certainly understand people planning and all that, but sometimes plans have to be adapted.
Right.
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 And so, you know, talking through with Sarah, here's how you could do this, right? You go to the hotel, you have a couple hours where you have a lot, energy to go do whatever is important to y'all. Then you come back and you take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you just nap for a while and then you go do dinner. And if you're not feeling good, you go back,
Right. Yeah.
And it ended up being one of the joys of her life, and I know that it meant the world, from what I understand, to her husband,
Yeah.
because they were able. She ended up. She had been a volunteer at an aquarium in California. Really, really loved the aquariums, and was able to go to the aquarium and get a back, you know, um, backstage view or
Yeah.
whatever, of the aquarium where they really were able to talk to her about the work that they did there. And it was just a delight for her.
Oh,
And
that's beautiful.
so, that's the kind of thing that, quite frankly, I think we all should be thinking about long before we even have any diagnosis
Right.
necessarily. And that certainly has informed my life, because I'm pretty big on if it's on my bucket list, if it's really on my bucket list, I don't want to wait,
Yeah. Right.
until I retire to do it.
Right. Well, you mentioned some of the planning around trips or bucket list adventures or things we want to do. What about relationships? And, as we get to the end of our life, we hear stories about people saying, oh, I wish I could improve my relationship with my daughter, or gosh, I have some regret about X, Y, or Z. Does an end of life doula help in those areas as well?
Absolutely, they
Yeah.
can. And again, every end of life doula can be different
Mm-hmm.
in what their strengths are and what they offer.
Right.
But absolutely, relationship is one of the huge things that I talk to people about,
Mm-hmm.
and communicating about illness. So, for example, with Sarah, she had nieces and nephew that were or niece and nephew that were very important in her life,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as children involved in the family. And so we did a lot of discussions about how to help the parents, or in conjunction with the parents, how to communicate with the children regarding Sarah's illness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Because we do have to be mindful of, if a child, developmentally, where are they, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk to a 6-year-old differently than you're going to talk to a 16-year-old about the fact that your beloved aunt is going to die,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, just being mindful of their developmental, but also being mindful of kind of how it's best to communicate with them about it. For example, imagine, instead of saying that someone has, let's just say, cancer that is impacting their stomach and gastrointestinal area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, instead of trying to just say, they have cancer, instead saying they have a tummy ache,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? And then what is going to happen potentially when that child has their next tummy ache because, you know what I mean? Or mom has a tummy ache, or you see mom throwing up, or whatever. So you really do, it can be, it's important to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the intimacy of a husband wife relationship, being able to talk about your fears, your concerns, and certainly just kind of helping facilitate some of those discussions.
Right.
And you mentioned what I call unfinished business,
Right. That's what I
right?
meant. Right.
Yeah. And so we all, to some degree, have, or most people have some unfinished business. So if there are estranged relationships, thinking through, is this something I want to do what I can do to 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 make peace with it? That may be reaching out and having all kinds of conversation, and then everything is just perfect. Not usually. What comes to mind for me on that is someone that gave me permission, that had an estranged relationship with a very close family member and had lost touch with them over the years. And so that that resolution was limited, right, on what it was that they were going to be able to do to make peace with that.
Right.
And so, inviting them to talk to me about what they wanted to say, right,
Yeah.
and coming to a place of peace on their own, that they did the best that they could in that particular situation, and come into a place of peace that wasn't going to be resolved and wrapped with a nice tidy little bow, right?
Right.
Which is what many of us would like.
Yes.
But at least it's something they've made resolution with, because that can impact, sometimes it can impact how people are approaching the end of their life.
Yeah. And let me ask two other questions about the end of life. I think of faith as playing a big role in someone's end of life. How do you partner with, or what role does someone's faith play in the work that you're doing for the patient?
Well, I'm guided by what's important to the patient.
Right.
Right. So certainly I have my own strong spiritual grounding and personal belief system. However, in a lot of ways, that's irrelevant when I am supporting someone else. And so really meeting them where they are, identifying what's important to them, and and really just supporting people through what is important to them in that regard.
Okay.
And I mean, I one of my standard questions for most people is, what do you think happens when we die? Because that tells me a lot.
Right. Right.
And there's obviously, over the years, the hundreds of people I've supported, there's quite a variance in the answers. And again, none of us know for sure. I don't know for sure. But that's really, again, irrelevant, in that my job is to support them where they are and help them explore and just get to a place of comfort. I do believe, for many people that I've accompanied, their belief system, their faith, their spirituality, which varies greatly, right, can really be a foundation that supports them at the end of their life.
Right. Yeah.
But then again, there's been others that don't have that kind of belief system. And it really is just being true to who you are.
All right. Yeah.
And I've been trained in all that too. I've
Yeah.
taken what's called clinical pastoral education. I served as a spiritual leader of a very small community for 5 years. So I mean, I have a background that supports that, although that's not my role.
Right. And the other thing I think of, and I'm sure everyone else does too, when you're thinking about death, end of life, how I imagine it, I would think there's also a lot of kind of the nuts and bolts, practical physical, this is what to expect when you're dying, the
It can
practical piece about this is what happens after you've died, and these are the people who will be called to come, some of that kind of stuff in relation to death. Do you address that as well?
if they want to. I
Mm-hmm.
ask them
Yeah.
how much do they want to know. I mean, again, everyone is different. Some
Mm-hmm.
people don't want to know.
Right.
Just, I don't want to talk about that. That's just too much for me. But there is, for some people, it's quite comforting in some way to know what's going most likely to happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so describing the dying process, if they want to know it, and of course everyone is unique, but there are some things that are common. Also, if they're involved with a hospice, typically hospice will have a handout or nurses that can address that with them, because again, everything that I do is in addition to any medical care that they may receive.
Right.
I am, as an end of life doula, I am a non medical person. That is not my role. Even if it's an end of life doula who's an RN, if they are serving as an end of life doula, they are not administering medication.
Right.
They are not doing anything physical. But it can be comforting to the person who's in the dying process, but it also can be comforting to the family,
Right.
right? I mean, I know, for example, with respect to Sarah and Michael, talking to them about, when the time comes that Sarah dies, you don't have to immediately call the coroner to rush in and get the body,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can sit with them. You can, whatever you want kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing, but really helping people as well as their family members think through that. And again, being clear on what they want and what they don't want. I mean, I will tell you, I've, had an opportunity. You can't do the work I do and not think about your own death. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
normal thing. And actually, I think it makes me a better practitioner or supporter of people. Um, but I mean, I've been clear on what my preference is, uh, but I've also put an asterisk on it,
Mm-hmm.
meaning this is what I'd prefer, but it's okay if you can't do it,
Right. Yeah.
because that's really hard on families. Sometimes there are circumstances where we can't do exactly what our loved one asked us to do. And I've also communicated to my husband what I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And as an example, I've told my husband, if I am in the dying process and I can hear a news program anywhere around me, I will come back and haunt you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to make light of that, but
Yeah.
I mean, people do have preferences. What
Yes.
smell do you want in the room? What music or no music would you like playing? Do you want to be able to hear the birds? Do you want the window open? Do you want the shades closed, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of things that actually can make our family feel good, or I don't know if good's the word, but can prepare them better because they know they've set things up the way you would want.
Right. Yes. And I think, again, there is more conversation about end of life doulas and preparing that way. But not everyone may know how to even investigate. If there's someone out there who's listening who thinks that sounds great, I want to make sure that my loved one or that I can have that kind of service at the end. Where does a person start looking for someone like you?
Well, certainly you can just do a search.
Mm-hmm.
However, what I recommend people do is go to the National End of Life Doula Alliance
Okay.
website. That's NEDALLIANCE.org.
Okay.
That is the membership organization of end of life doulas that choose to join it. Not everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like about it is it has excellent education about what an end of life doula does and does not do, how to, it even I think has guideline or just recommendations on how to find somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or to the questions to ask. It's also important to note that I've identified myself as a certified end of life doula, but
Okay.
here's the thing: certified is indicative of the training program that they took.
Okay.
End of life doulas isn't a regulated industry. It's not like when you hear RN, you know what that means,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
Right.
you hear LCSW, you know there's been a big test, there's been all kinds of different things one had to do to get those credentials. Certified end of life doula depends on the quality of the training program that they took.
And what's the
Okay.
highest quality program in your opinion?
There's several that I would recommend,
Mm-hmm.
and when people call me and just ask me general ideas about that, typically it depends on the person. I mean, there are several people that I've served with on the National End of Life Doula Alliance board who have training programs. I'm a trainer, but I'm not doing that at this time. I'm more just trying to help direct people to whatever it is that their passion is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really want to identify one particular program, but I will tell you that I did my training just even though I'd been doing this work forever. I wanted to get a certification. I did my training with a woman named Deanna Cochran, which is the name of her program is Care Doula, and it was an excellent program. Deanna was a hospice nurse. She's been doing it for years, but there's several other people as well. But I think very highly of her program, and Alua has an excellent program. But again, there's other programs that people can identify. The National End of Life Doula Alliance has a listing of trainers
Mm-hmm.
that you can go. I always tell people check out their personality, make sure that that's kind of fits with you. The other resource in Florida is the Florida End of Life Doula Alliance, which
Okay.
again is a membership organization, and they have a listing of members as well.
Yeah. I mean, is it widespread? Are there hundreds of you in Northeast Florida, or is it a few here and there? What's the population like in your work?
I mean, certainly it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
There's more and more people who are choosing to do this work. It is, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get certification. I really want to do this, and I'll make money, for lack of a better way to
Mm-hmm.
say it. But it is an entrepreneur type environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that I mean, it is not for me, even though I love it, even though I've been doing it for years, it is not an exclusive sustainable income for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be, I want to be transparent about that.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it isn't for others. The
Mm-hmm.
people who have the consistent business for it to be a sustainable income are trainers
Right.
at this time,
Yes.
although there are individuals that do this full time, and it's sustainable for them.
Oh. Well, Nada, as we close out, is there one thing you want to make sure that people hear from our conversation about your line of work or the end of life, or any last words of wisdom? Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, live your life.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy every moment that you can. We can get caught up in the doing, and I encourage people to think about the being.
Right.
I also encourage people to have the discussions now. I mean, it's certainly, if you've had a diagnosis, definitely have the discussions with your loved ones and start really exploring that. But even for those of us that you're not in that hot minute, now is the time to do it, because it's so much easier to talk to our families when we haven't received a diagnosis. Because what's one of the first things a family member will say? Oh, you're going to be fine, right? If
Mm-hmm.
once you say, and so have the discussion now. Thank goodness I had the discussion with my sister before she died. A couple
Mm-hmm.
years before my sister died, at Olive Garden, we're having dinner, and I said, I think I want this when I die, which led to her saying, well, I think I want this. And my sister did not. I didn't have clear instructions, but because of that conversation, when I became the person who had to make decisions, I was very clear
Yeah.
that that's what I wanted. And I mean, seek out people who can support you. I do have an exciting program coming up that we'll talk about another day.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming up. And it's an end of life doula clinic at Mayo Clinic, Florida. So I'm very excited that we will have an opportunity to help people prepare through that clinic.
Oh, well, that's exciting. And I hope to have you back on to talk more about that program. And of
Thank
course, planning in any way is it's preaching to the choir over here at Grand Plans. And I really appreciate all that you've shared today. It's so important to have these conversations and to think through, I think one of the most beautiful times of our life is at the end. So thank you for making it a real talk. Thank you for normalizing it and bringing out the beauty in it. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Planning, I love what you're doing. Planning is truly a gift for our loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
I may think that my grandmother's ring or whatever I leave for my daughters is the most important,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm telling you, leaving them prepared for my death, that's a beautiful gift for them for the rest of their lives.
Oh, well, I agree 100%. So, Nada, thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Nada Frazier. I hope today's episode helped shed light on the compassionate role that the end-of-life doulas can play in supporting individuals and families during one of life's most sacred transitions. If you'd like to learn more about Nada's work or connect with her, you can visit her website at thesacredservant.net. And as always, if this conversation resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from learning more about thoughtful planning for the later chapters of life. I'm Susanna Barton, and this has been the Grand Plans Podcast, where we explore how proactive planning, legal, financial, medical, and personal, can help us live well now and age with intention. Until next time, take care and keep planning well.